My one, welcome. Please take a seat. You wouldn't have called me in here for a pleasant chat. What do you want, Stickman? If you kept this all-business attitude more often, maybe you would amount to something, eh? But I jest. I have the paradox report finished from your excursion in UNO2B. Oh god, here we go. Actually, it's not too bad. Sargon may have died prematurely, but overall the damage to the timeline is minimal. We've got his sons on the throne, and propped them up using one of our mercs acting as a general. As far as history is concerned, the Empire will survive, thousands will die, and when the time comes, it'll be all buried by the sands of time, with only Sargon's legend surviving. Huh. You wouldn't have called me in just to tell me that, so I assume there's more? Indeed, that's where you come in. Your escapade didn't go unnoticed by certain less lenient parties of interest. Let me guess. Oh, no, I'm not done. On top of getting the eye of the UGA, not to mention HR and some very astute void spirits, you've also cost us a fortune in containment costs, bribes, and propping up Sargon's empire. So you want me to lay low, keep my head down, and pay off the debt, then? Not quite. While you've cost us greatly, you've opened up a new potential revenue stream. After all, the ancient world is full of riches for the plunder, and a mercenary is always in need. The only thing is now you'll be working with a greater deal of oversight. Lest you want the UGA to receive their pound of flesh. Alright, where are you sending me? Specifically, we'll be sending you to meet up with a young man named Pyrrhus, former and future king of Epirus. And more importantly, one whose chaotic and foolhardy reign is ripe for the reaping and the spoils. You'll meet up, do whatever you can to earn his trust, and march with him to his first major military campaign at Ipsus. Well, it's not like I have much of a choice in this. Bon voyage, as they say. And don't damage the timeline too much.
How can a man make a name for himself when titans roam the stage of the world? When the heirs of Alexander the Great fight over who will succeed the greatest conqueror there ever was? My friend and master often asks me this question, and I always give him the same answer. Searching for greatness in this way is folly. One can only become content by refusing to give in to such desires. Pyrrhus, of course, politely calls me an idiot when I say this, if not by that exact word. For him, carving a legacy is the one thing that truly gives life meaning. He says, a man must fight unrelentingly to become stronger than all others, until he finds himself alone on the throne of the world, just as Alexander did. To which I politely reply that he is an idiot, if not by that exact word. Pyrrhus was born on the edge of the thunderous storm that is Greek politics. At a young age, he was placed on the throne of Epirus, a small mountain kingdom on the fringe of the civilized world. But before he could get used to how the crown felt upon his head, it was ripped away. The Epirots rose up in rebellion against their young monarch and installed a man named Neoptolemus on the throne. He was a murderous, small-minded man who would sell his own mother for another province to rule. In other words, he was just the sort of unremarkable ruler that the people desired. Landless and crownless, Pyrrhus was forced to escape to the east. Here he joined the court of his brother-in-law, Demetrius, whose father Antigonus was quickly becoming the most powerful of Alexander's successors. Antigonus's growing power alarmed the others. From all over Alexander's broken empire, they now joined forces against him. The two great armies met near the town of Ipsus, in the heart of Antigonus's realm. Serving as one of Demetrius's commanders, Pyrrhus finally found a chance to test his mettle.
Hey guys, Ognaj Teff here, and today I've been shanghaied by the CEO to participate in the campaigns of Pyrrhus, starting with the Battle of Ipsus. Yay! Most people will recognize the name Pyrrhus from the phrase Pyrrhic victory, which means a victory so costly that is tantamount to a defeat. That should inform you how well this entire thing is going to go. Well, this first part is a simple no-build segment when we're trying to reach the lines of General Antigonus and his son/second-in-command, Demetrius. To get there, we need to face off against raiders under the command of Seleucus, the satrap of Babylonia, who is raced from his wars against Chandragupta in India specifically to fight Antigonus here in Anatolia. Other than a couple attempts at ambushes, namely here at this bridge and on this cliff, we've reached Demetrius' camp just as the armies of Antigonus and Lysimachus face off.
Oh, father has you running errands behind the lines now. Ah, do not worry. He may not show it, but he respects your skill and ambition. Otherwise, he would not have given you command of the right flank.
Look to the north, my lord. The battle is starting.
This is the end of the road for you, Antigonus. You cannot possibly stand up to the combined might of the Diadochi. I am the only true heir of Alexander here, Lysimachus. And I will show that today on the field of battle. Charge, men! Keep up the pressure, men! We will have these dogs on the run before long.
The second part of this battle is a building phase, where we build up our forces and raid into the enemy flank, commanded by Seleucus' son Antiochus. The primary goal being the destruction of the enemy stables, so that we can rout the enemy's left flank and then leave them vulnerable to a charge into the enemy's rear. While we build up our forces, get a bit of an economy going, and research up some texts, standard startup phase sort of deal, let's talk about the Macedonian tech tree. Overall, this is a good tech tree in terms of the units, with elephants, heavy cavalry, and phalanx making up the bulk of the army, which also makes for a strong and historical front line. Furthermore, everything in terms of bonuses encourages you to be hyper-aggressive like Alexander and the Diadochi, with bonuses to scouting, armor, and mediocre but cheap siege. The only really weird thing is the total lack of temples at all, especially given the heavily religious nature of Alexander and his generals. But, in a way it makes sense, because this means your really expensive units can and will be whittled down over time. This works really well with the theme of the Macedonians and Pyrrhus in particular, as the army is strong but brittle. It can destroy your enemies, but in exchange you will take heavy losses as your units are forced to fight in a weakened state. Speaking of temples, the Macedonians get the conversion resistance bonus from the Teutons from the base Age of Empires 2, meaning that their slow infantry elephant combo is shielded from mass monks. This is good, but given many of the wars of the Diadochi were decided by betrayal, I guess it's fine. Back to the battle at hand, though, I'm going to work on two primary goals. One, raiding Antiochus, and two, building up a defensive barricade for reasons. Speaking of raids, the first big hurdle here is actually just getting into Antiochus' fort, because his opening area here, just at the broken bridge, is guarded by cavalry and towers, which is actually a surprisingly difficult, well, not difficult, this was not difficult, a surprisingly prolonged fight, I should say. In that he kept spawning cavalry to keep going around, it kept bogging down units, and the fact that I'm using primarily phalanx, which are slow and unable to catch cavalry, archers, which are directly countered by cavalry, and my own cavalry have actually already been weakened due to just the journey here and fighting Seleucus' camels. However, getting through things, I eventually mop up their forces, move in to destroy their stables in the south before wheeling around and joining Demetrius, who you can sort of control. You give them a little waypoint, and they'll follow. Speaking of Demetrius, here's the little fortification I mentioned earlier. During this time, a lot of my focus was split between this fortification and raiding the stables and the market and the town center and other production structures of Antiochus.
I had actually at this point sort of delayed the actual completion of this objective specifically to continue building up these fortifications, because the longer the battle went on, the harder it would be, but at the same time, these fortifications were key to my defensive strategy in winning the overall level, so I kind of needed these things to be done before I actually finished off the stables, which I probably could have done here, but I decided to go after the village center or town center first, sort of cut off their production. But after that, I'll eventually wheel around north again to finish off the final 2 stables, which will sort of catapult us into the next phase of this level. So here we are, just whopping up the last of the forces here. We're gonna charge around, kill up whatever cavalry is left, deal with the few... Well, Lysimachus already has the upgraded version of the hoplites here, which can already do so much more damage and take so much more punishment that like just these couple of men have almost completely wiped out my forces. That's how bad it was. But eventually I was able to clean up that last stable just as I'm starting to get the walls completed and start up a series of towers to defend the region. And that is when we get this alert.
We have crushed the enemy's eastern flank. Send word to Antigonus to commence the counterattack.
We were too late, my lord. Antigonus' line has broken, and he has begun to retreat.
This cannot be. We must cover their retreat as best we can. After me, men!
Unfortunately, while we have crushed the enemy's left flank, Lysimachus did the same to our own. And it's worse, the cavalry and Indian war elephants of Seleucus. What do you mean there is no elephants? Elephants were the reason they won the battle. They had like 600. Like, Pyrrhus could not penetrate the elephants. What do you mean they've been replaced by camels? Oh, balance? Really? Fine. The cavalry and camels of Seleucus has prevented us from committing our own flank. We must pull back and defend Demetrius' town center as we organize a retreat. Oh look, a well-built fortified position. Where did this come from? We cannot fight Lysimachus' centurions and Seleucus' invisible war elephants, but we can stall them. The goal here is simply to have one town center survive for 10 minutes against the superior quality troops of our enemies. Though, I should mention there is an achievement that you should save all 3. That's not happening in this run. Using Pyrrhus to hit and run while my infantry and archers turtle up, I can pick off enemy units and lead their stacks around my towers to weaken them before my phalanx moves in for the kill. One-on-one, I don't stand a chance. But if I'm smart and make no grievous mistakes, victory is assured. So I'd actually like to make a very quick note about Macedonian battle tactics here, as well as just a quick note on Pyrrhus himself. So, Macedonians put a huge emphasis on the right flank, specifically because of their main weapon, the sarissa, being such a heavy and long-ranged pike that it was very difficult to defend the right side. So only your best troops and best generals could hold that side, which was automatically just weaker than the left flank, which was more heavily secured due to the left-handed shields of the Macedonian army. This points to a heavy degree of faith in Pyrrhus as a commander and as a cavalry officer, as his skill and prowess was what would have assigned him to the right flank under Demetrius. Speaking of Pyrrhus himself, the hero unit in this game is actually really good. So he has an ability which is a one-time charged hit, which is actually reminiscent of Age of Mythology series, where all the heroes would have these little bonus abilities that would fire off every now and then. Which is actually an interesting touch that they went back to that idea. I hope they continue this sort of deal. But every now and then, Pyrrhus will just do even more damage and do a massive hit on an enemy, and I'm going to use this ability to weaken down the Centurions, which have 30 damage per hit, as well as a bunch of armor and a bunch of health. So my only hope is to do hit and runs, as they are very slow. So that is the plan. We get in, we hit them for max damage, and then we run. Yes, I'll get caught out a few times, but so long as I don't make any mistakes, like I said, everything should be fine. Anyway, it is here when I make a grievous mistake.
You must abandon the fight, my lord. That ghastly wound cannot go untreated. We will continue the battle without you.
Honestly, that was a bit of a cheap shot. But thankfully, unlike other hero-centric campaigns, that is not an instant defeat, and we have held out for long enough that the town center will survive until we've achieved victory. Defeat? Huh. Well, however the battle's outcome technically went, that'll be all for now. Thank you for watching, and I should get going before I'm captured. So this has been Ognaj Teff, and I'll see you all again next time in Age of Empires Pyrrhus of Epirus campaign. See you then.
Despite having never lost a battle during his 80 years on Earth, Antigonus lost both the war and his life at Ipsus. The retreat left Pyrrhus sour. He had routed the enemy on his flank, impressing his superiors with his courage. And yet, it was all for naught. For a time, Pyrrhus wondered if he had tied himself to a sinking ship, yet he remained loyal to Demetrius. In time, that loyalty would pay off, but not in the way that he had expected.